So I had a shower thoughts moment earlier, and I think that video game emulators should be legalized. The ROMs, the emulators, the whole thing. And I have reasons for saying this, and I also have a couple of ideas about how it could work, and I'll get into that later. But first, I want to talk about how video game emulation kind of started. So there's not really concrete evidence of the first general emulator, but there is one in the early 1960s made by IBM to emulate one of their IBM computers. And that's crazy to think. 1960s, they were already working on emulation. It's nuts. Now, one of the first video game emulators is the SNES 9X, and it's right in the name. It was made to play Super Nintendo games, and that one was released in 1996. And since then, there's been a slew of video game console emulators released, ranging from the Atari, Neo Geo, PlayStation, everything in between pretty much. And there's always new ones being created too to emulate the most recent console generation. But those typically seem to get targeted and shut down fairly quickly, especially if they have anything to do with Nintendo consoles. The first time I tried an emulator myself was way back in 2010, I believe, and it was the Z-SNES emulator. And I couldn't tell you why it was that one specifically. It could have been that I just searched it and that was the first one that came up, or maybe a friend gave me that file. I'm not really sure, but that was the first one I tried. And let me tell you, the potential for this thing, I just saw it immediately. It was so amazing that I could instantly try out all of these old games that I had never tried, or games that I had owned in the past and just wanted to relive. It was just this endless potential for gaming. And so what might be the arguments against emulators and ROMs? Like, what would the companies that made these consoles originally and the games originally say? Well, I could see one argument being copyright infringement, right? So you actually have a copy of someone else's material, right? You have a non-legal or non-official copy of their material. Another argument could be that the company is losing a sale, whether it's the hardware company that made the hardware or the company that made the video game itself for the ROM, right? They're losing a sale on that by you acquiring the ROM or emulator. And so first I want to discuss kind of why I think this should take place, even with the obvious kind of legal concerns that exist. So my first point would be that these games are not readily available anymore. For a lot of these older games, you have to go to some sort of retro gaming expo, some sort of thing like that, some sort of antique game or retro gaming shop. And even if you are able to find a working console and working game, those prices could be extraordinary. And it's for something that's used. It's not even guaranteed to work for very long. I don't think it's fair for the consumer if a video game or the console to play it on, or both, are prohibitively expensive for the consumer. And so this kind of leads into my second point. There's not a good way for these older games, a lot of them anyway, to be played legally. They're not on offer by these developers anymore. And again, I say most of them because there are services through Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft to play a lot of older games, but not all of them, not even close to all of them. They really pick and choose kind of the most popular older ones, but there could be very specific games that somebody grew up with and really enjoyed that might not fall under that very popular game list that they really want to play again, and it's just not available. And there could be lots of titles like that. Games that people grew up on that kind of shaped their childhood that they just can't play in a legal way in the existing market. So I think I said I'm at point 2, but really there's about 3 things so far. So they're hard to find. They're not on offer by these developers anymore in terms of retail, right? You can't go to a store and buy a physical copy anymore. When you do find these used physical copies or physical hardware, they can be prohibitively expensive. And for a lot of titles, actually the majority of titles for these consoles, they are not on offer in a legal manner at all, on any platform, legally anywhere. And for the argument about the company not getting the sale, well, they continue to not get the sale anyway on the recirculation of these old copies and old hardware. Every time there's a resale happening, the company is missing out on that sale. So what can really be done about this? What's the solution? Well, I do have a couple of ideas. The first being what some companies are already doing. So basically just offer your own emulation. Offer it up. Offer some online service if you have to. I'm sick and tired of subscriptions. Subscriptions are everywhere. Please, no more subscriptions. But if that's the only way that you're going to do it, the only way that you're guaranteed to make the money you want from these games, then do that. If there's a legal way that people can spend their money and experience these old games and not get in trouble, right? No fear of repercussions. Do that. Do that. We will gladly take that if there's no other option. But I think there are other options. I have a couple of ideas here. So my preferred solution, my favorite solution here would be to let any site, any individual, any company host the ROMs and the emulators that they want to, any of them, right? As long as, there's a caveat, these devices and these software titles, these video games, are no longer in circulation, right? So the developer, the hardware creator, is no longer selling these devices or these software titles in stores anymore. They are no longer making retail price or any money on these titles anymore. They've decided to stop circulating, right? And so that qualifies all of these emulators and software titles to be made into ROMs and be distributed online in that form. So that would be the most ideal. I don't know if it's necessarily the cleanest. I'm not sure. I don't know about the details, how it would exactly get worked out, but I think that could work. And it makes sense. If they're no longer going to be making any money on these consoles and these games anyway, why not let them circulate? What's the problem, right? And they're already circulating in terms of the physical anyway. They're already being resold. The company is no longer making money on those resales. So why can't we do the same thing in a digital format as well? So the other solution I have is a lot more work for the developer, but it would probably result in a much higher quality experience for the consumer. So basically, the company, as soon as they decide that they're not making as much in terms of physical sales as they want, and they decide to stop circulation of their physical sales, or, you know, they're moving on to the next generation of consoles and the games that come along with it, whatever the case, right? They make their own emulator and their own ROMs and list them on their own website for consumers to then download and experience themselves. So no subscription, right? It's just on a website, and maybe they charge for the access of the emulator and the ROMs. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not sure. I don't know what would be the perfect solution there, but if they're creating it and they're converting these games into ROMs for us, maybe we do pay. That would make sense. There's kind of an equal trade there then, you know, they're providing a product and we pay for the product to experience it. But again, that's a lot more work for the developer, a lot more. Every single game has to have a physical, you know, cartridge or disc version, and every console has to have an emulator made. A lot more work. Maybe not though, because games are made digital a lot anyway, and kind of the physical medium is not as popular. I wouldn't say it's going away completely, but it's definitely not as popular now that it's so easy to just download a game completely. So again, I don't know the nitty-gritty of these details. I'm not sure how they would work that out. These are just ideas. These are shower thoughts I'm floating around for you guys. But I really think it could be possible. I think we could have emulators and ROMs legalized, and in ways that don't infringe on copyright. Or if they do infringe on copyright, maybe that copyright law is outdated and needs to be revised. Because again, if the company is creating something that they obviously want in circulation or recirculation with resale of these games, the physical games and the hardware, why can't we do the same with a digital version? Who knows? Maybe I'm just off my gourd. Maybe these are crazy ideas. Maybe it would never work. I don't know. I just thought it was worth thinking about and worth sharing with you guys. Let me know in the comments if you like these ideas. Let me know your ideas. Maybe you have some better ideas than I did, and I will see you guys in the next video.